This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Okay, wasn't really planning on talking about this, but zoink Scoob, this is Wretched Radio. A headline from Fox News, Hollywood blockbuster that satirizes, hey, speaking of satire going over the line, the killing of deplorables. Causes outrage. Well, at least it still causes an outrage. Now, please keep in mind, the lines here are blurred. It's all about, it was originally going to be called Red State, Blue State. That was Red State, Blue. So it was a political thing. But I'm not exactly sure that our culture, in fact, actually, I'm not sure a lot of Christians make the distinction between being an evangelical and being a Republican. Nevertheless, these people they've made a movie that has satirically a dozen people, I believe, going out to kill. No, they want to go out and kill a dozen people. They're on a private jet on their way to a luxury resort, and they want to stop and kill a bunch of deplorables.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, righty.
Where did they find that many liberals who would touch guns?
Well, that is a bit of an irony here, isn't it? In fact, it's so ironic, it reeks right off of the page. Hollywood apparently lacked the foresight to think that a movie promoting violence against deplorables might be in bad taste after the shootings in El Paso and Dayton. As now, Universal is rethinking their promotional strategy for the film. This is a bit of a description of what happens in the film. One character asks early in the screenplay for The Hunt, is what it's called, has nothing to do with ketchup. Did anyone see that bleep in chief, and it is a very nasty word, what he just did? Yikes. Set to open September 27th, but now Universal Studios is saying, well, in light of the shootings, wait a second. In light of the shootings, are you admitting there's actually a connection between our promotion of violence in our culture and people going out and shooting people en masse? Mm-hmm. Seems to me that's pretty obvious, if you don't mind me saying so. Nothing better than going out to the manor and slaughtering a dozen deplorables. A violent R-rated film with all kinds of gun. According to the release, the movie features guns blazing along with ultra-violent killings as the elites pick off their prey. And who are the prey? Well, people in red states, apparently. Now, you and I, we see the irony in this, and in response to what is going on with these horrific shootings, all the duplicity in all of this, you really can't miss it. That Hollywood that has these violent video games, these violent movies, the celebration of thug life, and then a shooting happens, and they just want to point at a politician and not see any sort of responsibility that they might have in promoting a culture like this. I'll tell you, the gun thing from a Christian perspective, let's go beyond the Rush Limbaugh talking points and what Sean Hannity no doubt is saying about this. Let's remember here some theology about guns and responsibility and what causes people to do what they do. Guns don't shoot people. People shoot people. A gun is not a moral agent. Only the human beings are. And we used to have guns a lot. We had guns. I think hold on. I think I've actually got the statistic for you. If I recall, proportionally, based on population, we have as many guns per person years ago as we do today. So what's the difference? What's happened? Here it is right here. Why so many mass shootings? This is from, let me get to the source for you. But what's changed in our culture? Well, how's about violent movies? How's about just treating human beings like they're just target practice? Video games where we're shooting police officers? Music that celebrates thug life? That's just a starter. This is far more holistic than just the gun issue, which I believe we Christians should be willing to talk about. In fact, I would even throw this out for your consideration. I'm not making any sort of statement about guns, but my responsibility as a Christian is my family and the safety of people. And look, I'm willing to take a close. That's my priority as we discuss gun issues. I want my family to be safe. I'm more interested in fulfilling my responsibility to protect my family than I am in any rights conversation or any legislative conversation. So that's what motivates me biblically. Now, having said that, how's about some of the other things like, we don't have a society anymore where we are a self-policing state, if you will. There used to be a time, just make it small. Let's bring the argument, forget the country for a moment. This is a small town in rural Georgia, rural Minnesota. You pick it. It doesn't matter. West Virginia, Montana, which actually is all still rural right now. But the point is, now let's say it's a little town. If there's a boy or there's a girl, and everybody knows it's not wise to let that child have a gun. They didn't get a gun. It was a self-policing sort of affair. You were taught by somebody how to treat that very dangerous weapon to make sure that you don't hurt somebody. And then you were told that human beings have a high value, and you don't play around with this thing, and you don't have it loaded and pointing at people. And all that was done by community. That's gone to a great degree. So how's about that's what's changed in our culture? Let me try to find the statistic for you in this article. America had plenty of guns when its mass murder rate was much lower. Grant Dewey, a PhD in criminology and director of research at the Minnesota Department of Corrections, gathered data going back 100 years in his book, Mass Murder in the United States, A History. So there's your source. In the 20th century, every decade before the 70s had fewer than 10 mass public shootings. In the 50s, there was one mass shooting. And then a steep rise began in the 60s, 6. In the 70s, it rose to 13. In the 80s, it went to 32. Rose again in the 90s to 42. As for this century, the New York Times reported in 2014 that according to the FBI, mass shootings have risen drastically in the past half dozen years. People, by the way, pointing to the iPhone for that. What, if anything, has changed since the 60s and 70s? How's about that we're not as religious a culture? Here's another headline. Few Protestant churchgoers read the Bible daily. Naturally done by Lifeway. 32% of Protestants, now evangelicals slightly higher. Evangelicals, I think the number goes maybe up to 36% that read their Bible every day. We're not as religious a people. How's about that as we have these conversations? I'm willing to talk about gun laws. I don't think you sell the farm or give it away by just talking about it. But let's talk about these other things too. Boys have fewer male role models. Fewer men marry. And normal boy behavior is largely held in contempt by their feminist teachers, principals, and therapists. How's about that for a change? Why don't we ask the question, what percentage of American murderers attend church each week? How's about that? You want to talk about why this is going on? How's about a massive culture shift? Whenever we see a big trend in culture, it is my opinion, you can just look for the string and attach it to a worldview. These things do not happen in a bubble. Regarding boys' needs for fathers, 2008, then Senator Obama, maybe you remember him, told an audience, quote, children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of schools, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. He didn't get pilloried for that. You do today, of course. Let's talk about these things, shall we? And this is why it is my hope. This is speculation. I grant you that it is my hope that as we see our culture, and it is most certainly devolving, as people, I mean, at what point, Christian, are we going to start? Maybe you are already doing this. Hold on. We're not going to go to that concert. We're not going to go to that mall. Safe spaces, really? You can't let your family do that. At what point might people start going, okay, we need to get, this has got to change here. And I can't help but wonder if the Christian gospel will be just sitting up on the tee, actually on top of the rubble, that a godless worldview has created for us. Nearly all men who murder are single. Oh, what happened to marriage in our country? It's been devalued. Speaking of abortion and devaluing life, has that changed since the 70s? How's about movies that devalue life. Netflix just greenlighted series season 4. Season 3 hasn't even aired yet on 13 Reasons Why You Should Commit Suicide, according to Netflix. Or that girl did, in fairness. Season 3 hasn't aired. Season 4 has been greenlighted. You can't help but notice suicide rates among teens went up after the first season of that series. Our culture has radically, radically changed, and I would like to hope that maybe, just maybe, it is the message of the gospel, not debates about all of these smaller issues and legislative issues. Fine, have those conversations, but we've got a solution to a sin-sick culture, and it has been the command of our King since he ascended into heaven. Let's go and make disciples. And until tomorrow, go serve your King.
If you'd like more Wretched content, and who wouldn't, visit wretched.org and you will have Wretched coming out of your nose. And that's biblical.